Good evening, everyone. My name is Bernadette Smith, and I'm going to be hosting our webinar tonight about the college essay. Just going to give people a couple more minutes to hop into our presentation tonight. So get settled, get comfy, get some water, and we'll start probably in 1 or 2 minutes max. Thanks so much, and we'll get started soon. Okay, great. Hi again, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I know some people are still trickling in at this point, but I want to be respectful of your time and your evenings and your dinners with your kids and everything else you must have going on. So we will dive into tonight's presentation. You are here for the College Essay 101 webinar presented on the Common App essay, some other essays, general tips that should be helpful, and we'll be covering all of that tonight. What I'll do while I'm sharing my screen, I'm just going to give you all a little bit of a heads up about some of the particulars for tonight, just so you're aware of everything. As you might have seen, it's clear that we're recording tonight's webinar. So everything that you get here tonight, if you miss anything, don't worry. I will be sending the recording link to all of you, and it will be a steady YouTube link that you can go back to at any time. So you will receive that. You'll also see that the chat is closed, but the Q&A is open. So I do have it up on my other screen here. So as you have questions throughout tonight's presentation, I'll be here to help and answer those. And if there's any that I can't get to, we run out of time, or there's just too many questions, you will have my email address. I did put it in the chat earlier, but it's very easy, Bernadette@novastarprep.com. But you'll also receive an email from me after tonight's webinar, which will have my contact information. So if we missed any questions, we'll certainly get through them as we continue. So those are really the two housekeeping things. Q&A is open, tonight's being recorded, and you certainly can share that recording link with anyone that may find this information helpful. So without further ado, I'm going to dive into our presentation and hopefully share a lot of really helpful information with you all that will make the process a little bit smoother and just give you a nice overview of what to expect. And so here, let me just see what's going on here. Hold on. Got a freezing issue here for 1 second. Let me just see what's going on. And while I do that too, I want to make sure that I just get this going for us here too. Okay, I do have one little poll that I'm going to put up to everyone, and this is just if you're the student here, and also if what your year of graduation is, if you are the student or the student that you're representing as a parent. So it's open right now. Feel free to hop in, and I'll be able to take a look at that as we continue. Okay. Awesome. So it looks like we've got a lot of students so far, some both that people joined together. And then you'll also see that we've got some college, child's year of graduation here. So I see that we definitely have some rising seniors with us, which makes total sense, but I expect some younger students and looking ahead to be part of this as well. So thank you guys for filling that out. So it looks about that most of you responding to it. Feel free. I'll keep it up for another moment here, and then we'll dive into our presentation. Okay. Thank you for filling that out. I think we've had it up for about a minute. I'll see if anybody else wants to fill it out, but I'll share my screen while we're at it. And then here, just for everyone's awareness as we continue with tonight's presentation, if you're unfamiliar with Novastar Prep, and you're also probably unfamiliar with me, and I'll share some about myself moving forward, but what you'll see here is that We provide a lot of educational webinars, which is why you're here tonight, but we're also comprehensive tutoring services. So we do test prep, which you may have heard of before, but we also do all subjects. So whether it's for an AP class, an IB class, whether you're a third grader looking to improve your math skills, a kindergarten student looking to work on reading and writing, we cover everything K through 12 and college level academics. And certainly one of the main reasons you're here tonight is that we also cover college admissions coaching. So certainly we're here for everything, and we try to really give dedicated support to all of our students through a success advisor who makes sure your child's making progress. So again, this is who we are as a company. We believe that every student learns differently, and the same is the case for the college essay. Every student is going to present themselves differently, and every student has a different story. So we'll certainly touch on all of that as we go through. Just so you have some awareness of who I am, if you're unfamiliar with any of our other webinars, my name is Bernadette Smith. I'm the Education Programs Director here at Novastar Prep. But just for your awareness, I'm also a licensed high school guidance counselor. My license is in the state of Massachusetts for grades 5 through 12. And I had been, until coming here, a counselor for over a decade. So 10 years in both private and public school settings. A very large public high school rather was my last setting before coming here to Novastar Prep. And before that, I was at a smaller private school. So definitely both levels of experience, but both very centered on post-secondary planning for students. That across the gambit, whether it's career exploration, obviously the college admissions process, research, different things with different extracurriculars, and building the college admissions profile. I've also been a college coach that entire time and started here at Novastar Prep as a college coach, working individually with students to build their college list, develop and finalize their essays, make sure their applications are in shape, work with them over years to build that admissions profile so that you're getting the extracurriculars that make the most sense with what your goals are, and so that you can showcase the best version of yourself to the admissions representatives that will be reading your file. And finally, I joke that I need to update this because I say 15 plus years as a writing tutor. It's probably creeping up a little bit more than that now that I've been doing this for so long. But I've been a writing tutor at the college level, PhD dissertation level. I've been a college English instructor and an academic coach. And so now in my role here as Education Programs Director at Novastar Prep, I'm going to be sharing more with you about the college essay and the whole process. All right. So diving in now, we're going to just go quick intro, not going to bore you to death with all the details of the history of the college essay because you're here for tangible next steps. But just so everyone knows, the college essay came around in the 19th century when Harvard decided to require a short essay. They had some specific prompts that they wanted students to answer to help with the admissions process. So once that started, it started to trickle to other universities. And over time, as you can imagine, it's really popped out at just about every university, minus some open admissions ones or ones that opt to not accept an essay in their process. The vast majority you will find will want some kind of essay, even if it's a shorter one, or the larger Common App one we're going to discuss tonight. But it's influenced, this foundational approach has influenced the essay formats used in most college applications today. And we'll see a couple of those that are more local. For example, we'll look at some Virginia Tech options. We'll look at some from UVA, just so people get a sense of the other questions that are being asked of them. But it's really about, a chance to reflect on someone's individual background and their experiences. So in terms of the importance, I've certainly had families ask me over the course of my career, like, what weight does the essay carry? And there are some schools that will flat out tell you it is 25%, it's 50%, it's 16%, whatever. They have kind of the list of what's most important to them on their websites. Other schools, it's very straightforward. It's one piece of the puzzle. So it's the essay, it's the GPA, it might be the test scores, it's the rigorousness of a student's schedule and how much they challenge themselves. It's were they engaged in thoughtful and meaningful extracurricular activities? Did they do anything for their community? So you will find that it is certainly still a very important part of the college admissions process, but it's one part of the whole puzzle that you're showing to the college admissions representatives. And for this, I've worked with a lot of admissions counselors over the years. I've helped out at different universities during heavy admission cycles. And one of the things you will find is that they do have an egg timer on sometimes when they're going through your application. So they're not spending hours on it. They're not, 15 is even a little bit strong in terms of 15 minutes here. So they are going to spend, part of that on your essay, a good portion of it, because they're going to scan through some of the other information, get a sense of where your GPA is, which program you're applying to, if you want to live on campus, to, other questions that you're answering. But then they're going to have a segment of time where they're going to dedicate to your essay. That's what we're also going to be talking about tonight, is making sure that we're grabbing their attention and we're keeping their attention so that when they're done reading your essay, they get a better glimpse into who you are and how you fit into their anticipated incoming freshman class. All right, let's see here. All right, and so talking about the Common App, we'll start with that because obviously that's one that 99% of students do have to fill out unless you're strictly going with the California system and only doing those, or if you're applying abroad and might not be doing schools that would have this component to it. But most of you and most of your children will be filling out the Common App. And so at this point, it's used by over 1,100 institutions, and it really does streamline the process. Before this part existed, they were dealing with it coming through their own systems, dealing back then with it coming in via the mail, different options like that, printouts that people were doing. This puts it all in one place, and it's a really great place for your child to track their applications, know that they hit submit on time, see all the little check marks come up, and make sure that everything's solid. It's also where you're going to find the Common App essays and in the overall Common App portion of it. And it's also where you're going to find any individual questions from particular schools. So as you can see here in this small image where it says Ole Miss, under questions there, that's often where you'll find a supplemental essay in terms of like why do you want to attend this college, or some other kind of additional short response. And then a lot of times too, you'll also see one that says supplemental essays. That's over here under Common App is where you're going to find the actual essay section, but these would be particular to the specific colleges. So that being said, moving on to the next slide here, these are the prompts for 2025 to 2026. Once again, the College Board has chosen not to change them. They've found that they've been successful, that students resonate with them. And frankly, and as I'm going to tell you as we go through all of this, odds are you have something that fits into one of these, so they haven't really seen a need to change them. So first, this one has been here forever. Some students have a background, identity, interest, or talent that is so meaningful, they believe their application would be incomplete without it. So this is where they want you to share your story there. Most of what a student is thinking about writing for their essay could fall into that category easily. And so when we talk about choosing a topic, this will factor into that in the sense of you might already have an idea that fits into one of these. Then another one here, this used to be what they referred to as like, what do you do with a failure question? And you see here that this is the lessons we take from obstacles that we encounter can be fundamental to later success. So again, the college essay is looking for growth. So this is where an opportunity to show that. So this is when you face a challenge, a setback, a failure. How did it affect you? And what did you learn from it? And so again, we'll go through different examples for each of these prompts, but that's one that students feel as though they can explain something in it. It's a chance to talk about how you've overcome a challenge before. And then this next one, I'll be honest, in my career, I haven't had a lot of students do number 3 here, which is reflect on a time when you questioned or challenged a belief or idea. What prompted your thinking? What was the outcome? I have had students do it. Certainly, I've read them before from other individuals. It's just not typically one of the most popular. I think a lot of students tend to gravitate towards number 1 here. And then also the next one, which is about reflecting on something that someone has done for you that's made you happy or thankful. This one was new within the last 5 or so years. That's been a really nice addition to the Common App prompts, and just learning about and explaining how has this gratitude affected or motivated you. So again, there's so many different opportunities here to write about any type of story that relates to you as an applicant, any type of experience that you've had, a person that really influenced you. And this next one does exactly the same thing as number 1 in the sense that you're discussing an accomplishment, event, or realization that sparked a period of personal growth. So that could be an accomplishment in school, that could be a realization that you had personally, that could be so many things that, again, odds are a story a student might want to tell already falls into one of these categories. Then a really nice one here is also Describe a topic, idea, or concept you find so engaging that it makes you lose all track of time. So this is a great opportunity if you or your student are the type of person that has something that you love learning about on your own, or an activity that you love so much that it goes beyond school, it goes beyond, requirements. You're not reading it just for class, or you're not participating in it just because it's required community service. This is a chance to talk about something that really captivates you. I've had students in the past that were major history lovers, and they wrote about something that they were always fascinated with and did their own research on their own. Other times it was things about, a particular type of music from a different culture that they wrote about in their fascination with it. It could be about a television show. It could be about a YouTube channel you follow. It could be anything, as long as you're telling the right story about it. And then if all else fails and you already have a fantastic idea and you feel for some reason it doesn't fall into these categories, share an essay on any topic of your choice. That one's not going anywhere. You'll always have that. So even if you don't feel like your essay topic fits into one of these, or if you're starting fresh, have no fear if it doesn't fit into one of these, because anything can fit there. So you'll be in good shape with that. You'll be able to fit anything into that. We'll go over some do's and don'ts in terms of topics and writing, but there is no limitation here in terms of the topic that you can choose and how you can make it fit one of these or simply fit topic of your choice. You will find on the Common App that you do have to select which essay you're responding to, because as we know, we're only writing one of these. So you do have to select that, and you're only going to select that once. If you are doing periodic submissions of it, you can change it on the next submission. Let's say you do some early actions and then you decide to change it. I don't necessarily recommend that, but if you really wanted to tweak something and say, never mind, I'm doing number 7, whatever it might be, you can. But just keep in mind, you're going to select which prompt you're responding to when you go ahead and paste your essay in. All right. I'm sorry, this is being a little bit slow on me today. Let me just get to our next section here. So I got the prompts again on the left just so that you can see them, but we know that it includes 7 prompts that are encouraging self-reflection. So when anyone asks me about what I want to see in a college essay or what an admissions rep wants to see, they really want to see growth, individuality, or putting it in a different way, something that shows them more than what they saw just in the numbers and the stats and the demographic information in your application. This is a chance for your students' voice to be heard. We don't have as many college interviews as we used to in the past, or a lot of them are alumni driven, which are still fantastic. But this is one of the chances for the admissions office to really hear your voice. This is why it's not the most academic paper you're ever going to write. This should sound like you or sound like your student. You don't necessarily need to make it like you're writing a dissertation. It doesn't necessarily need to sound like the most APA or MLA perfect essay. I mean, you want to be grammatically correct. You want to do all the right things in terms of really, formal writing, but there's a creativity element here, and there's a chance to really sound like yourself. Obviously, with the advent of ChatGPT and other AI models that are available, they are on the lookout for that. That doesn't mean you can't, ask ChatGPT for some help in terms of, brainstorming ideas, but they can tell when it's not authentic. And you really want to make sure that it sounds like you, or sounds like your student rather, and that it's a chance to just give them your voice in the moment that they have your application. Okay. And then here, strategies for selecting a prompt. We're going to go into some specifics for that, but really you want to pick something that resonates with your personal experiences or any challenges that you've faced. You're going to read some that are out there. There are some examples that you can look at. If you work with a college coach, they'll show you some as well. Not everyone has to be writing about the same thing, but you do want to make sure that you're not doing something too obvious or that they read all day long. So the joke I always make is, you certainly can write about your baseball team winning the championship and say that you learned about teamwork, but it better sound different than some of the other ones they already read that day. And so keeping in mind that you want to kind of catch them and bring them in, think about a story that really tells them something about you that they would not glean otherwise, or it really emphasizes something that's in your application that they couldn't quite get enough from it from just simply listing it as an activity. So there's opportunities here, but I do suggest that, it's something that showcases uniqueness, it shows some depth, and I can certainly, share some examples as we go throughout of, ones that I've read that have been particularly striking, that, kind of sit and people remember, because you're going to sometimes get them at the beginning of the day. You're going to get them right before they're walking out the door at 4:30. You want to capture their interest. All right. And so meaningful topic examples, that can be anything because it's what's meaningful to you. But we want to make sure we're conveying to the admissions reps why it's meaningful. And so one thing I did here, and I'll give these tips first, and then I'll show some examples that go along with the prompts that you've seen. But, as I mentioned before, if you already have a topic in mind, see how it fits into one of the prompts first. As I mentioned, it likely will, and the prompt will guide you. And again, this is directed towards students and the parents in the audience, but odds are there's something that they were maybe thinking they should write about. Maybe they did a project in their English class this year that was about writing the college essay. I know some classes do it for senior year at the beginning of the year, but perfect world, you get it done this summer so it's not stressful as you start the beginning of the school year. And then this is the case a lot of times. If a prompt does not jump out as the most attractive right away, start by eliminating the ones that don't seem right. You might eliminate that one about experiencing, like, experience of failure, or the one where you have to talk about challenging a belief. Make sure you're just eliminating the ones that you're like, I know I don't want to write about this. And then you can start to narrow down your choices. Again, we want to pick a prompt or a topic that shows growth. And growth doesn't just have to be academic. It can be about increasing responsibilities in your family. It can be growth from, a particular social situation you went through. It can certainly be academic growth. It can be growth in terms of how you see the world, growth in your beliefs. It can be anything that showcases that there's some difference between 8th grade you and the one that's going to walk on that campus the following fall. And the difference can be, as I mentioned, academic, personal, social, whatever it might be, but they do want to see that you've experienced a change, you've experienced some change to your overall voice, some change to your perceptions and your beliefs. Whichever topic is chosen, you want to make sure that it shows something that the application alone cannot fully address. So when you get to the application, when it's time, and if you've had older siblings who did this, part of it is that you are given a chance to list activities. If you've done it before, you know that they don't give you a lot of room. And so oftentimes it's the name of the activity, what your title was in it, if you were the captain, if you were the forward on the basketball team, if you were the president of the student government, whatever it might be. And then they give you a very tiny space where you can barely explain the importance of it. So remember that you're not going to have a chance to explain everything away, but you also don't want to just reiterate that you were part of a group. You want to show what happened during that. Like maybe you never thought you were going to be a leader in it when you first started joining a group, and then you became that, and you can tell a much deeper story about it that has more to it. But keep in mind that we want to make sure that it's showing more than I want to attend this school, more than I just want to go to college, more than, 9th grade was hard and then I got my grades up. You want to show the story of that. You want to give more details to it. All right. Let's see here. All right, so getting started with that, I do recommend reading and rereading the prompts and taking notes on the ones that relate to you. So when I was working with students one-on-one, this is what we would do. We would sit together and on Zoom or whatever it might be, we would go through and say, okay, this first one, what part of your identity do you think your application would be incomplete? If you did not include some, sentiment about that, some indication that this part of your identity is huge, and then take notes there. It can be anything. Like, for myself, I am a gigantic sports fan. I live, breathe, eat, sleep sports. And that's something that maybe back then I could have, put together a story that really showed where that came from, because my dad loves sports so much and things like that, and really telling a story about it. Or, the other best way to do this is to seek input from parents, friends, relatives, or teachers. I think we all know this as parents. We all know this as friends. Myself as a counselor. Sometimes the individual writing the essay doesn't think about the story that other people think about when they think about them. So your parent might be like, how are you not writing about the time that this happened in ninth grade and then you changed this, or you started this club, or you did whatever, or this relationship you had with your grandmother and it's really important to show. Um, really talk to people around you. Your friends might even say, oh, why aren't you writing about what like a caretaker you are to your friends? Why aren't you writing about how created this culture at school and everybody looks to you for a certain thing? Like, it's very hard to talk very highly of ourselves sometimes. So go to those people who already know you very well and already think very highly of you and see what story they think you should tell admissions. It's a nice way of taking it outside of yourself and being able to see a little bit more of your story and what people think about you. And then you want to capture your thoughts. When you've chosen a few potential topics, write some sentences in your own words to expand your idea. So this can be bullet points. This does not have to be an outline form yet, just getting a sense of why you're telling this story. You'll see on other slides that we're going to address tonight that you want to walk away from your essay at the end answering the question that admissions is asking about it. And that question is, so what? What does this story matter? So what? It can be a really nice story, but what does it mean and what does it say? And then once you choose that prompt, it's going to be time to brainstorm, outline, and write. Certainly all of this is something I've worked with students where we start at the very beginning, no idea what topic, nothing written. Other students who come in with a draft. You can be at any point in the process, but certainly having a college coach can be really helpful with reassuring you that you're picking a really good story to tell. It gives them a chance to know you as well and hear more about the story and talk it out. And it's one of those things where you can just hear one little piece that you didn't realize you should emphasize that somebody on the outside looking in was like, wow, that really struck me. So it provides reassurance, it provides that expert guidance, and it gives you a chance to feel as though you didn't miss anything that you should be sharing with admissions. And so this is where I mentioned I'm going to share a little bit more about the particular prompts and what I've seen before for essays, what, are common, not necessarily common like you're telling an old story, but just gives you some ideas to jog your brain and your brainstorming around what these prompts might refer to. And again, they're so open-ended that by all means, please just take this as some suggestions. This is not the end all be all. Everyone has their own story. And as someone who's read these essays before, I'm looking to read something that I didn't read all day. So certainly these are examples and can be helpful. So here you see we've got the prompt. For some students have that background identity or interest that's so meaningful they believe their application would be incomplete. So sometimes for this, like you can see here on the other portion here on my right, the cultural identity, somebody's gender identity, a hobby, if they're really into a video game community, if they're something about reading and what it's done for them over their lifetime. I think about both of my daughters and their relationship with reading and what that means to them and how it's affected their lives in so many ways. Sports, as I mentioned before, it can be your dedication to a sport you play yourself, the way that you've always been the type of kid that seems like the captain on the team and always has that good spirit, whatever it might be. History that you might be interested in. You love cooking. So maybe there's something that during, COVID, we look back and people picked up new hobbies and it changed their lives in some way. Specific, unique talents. You can really think outside the box here. Like I've had people write about really ridiculous things that they can do that you wouldn't think of as the talent you want to share when you're talking about college admissions. But there's so many things you can do with this that throw it out there, see what it is, because you're going to surprise yourself by how much you can actually just get an admissions rep to stop and say, huh, I didn't think about that. I've had a student write just about being left-handed. Not that it's necessarily a talent, but just being left-handed and what that, and it sounds silly, but it was one of the most compelling essays I've ever written. Some people have written about the thoughts they have in the shower and, and different things like that. So you can take a very creative approach. And so again, think of like some people are super into true crime and podcasts and things like that. You don't want to just explain your passion or your interest, though. You want to take a story with it. How did you grow within it? What does it mean to you? What does that mean about the person you've developed into? But it's a really cool place to start thinking about. Jot down the things that are most important to you. Jot down the things that like you could talk your friends' ears off about it. That, we joke, about if I could give a PowerPoint presentation to somebody, maybe not just on the college essay, what would I feel so excited to present to my friends or my kids or my family? And then in terms of the lessons we take from, different obstacles we faced, challenges, setbacks, failures, sometimes students will talk about moving multiple times throughout high school and how that affected their trajectory. Again, weaving in creativity to it, but also talking about how they overcame that. This can be also where a parent's divorce, death and mourning, academic difficulty, social difficulty, not achieving a certain goal. I've had students write about something that they worked for years and it didn't come to fruition. And that's extremely difficult to write about. It makes one feel very vulnerable, but they did something in that email that really, in that essay that really showed they're never giving up. And it was a real life example of not achieving something as a way of showing that they're constantly trying to achieve in a really healthy way. And then this one, which I mentioned that sometimes I don't get as many of, or reflect on a time when you questioned or challenged a belief or idea. This can be anything, social conscience wise. This can be like, why isn't public higher education free in the United States? You could question a particular religious belief. You could question something in terms of, a particular political stance that individuals take, or that you question an idea that was in your family. You question something in your group of friends, or, that might be social media related, anything that you've questioned it. And what was the outcome to that? Did you have a really eye-opening conversation with someone? Did you challenge a belief and then get really reinformed and change your mind on it, thinking that you were challenging the original thought? Just think of something that's widely accepted and what you think. And that can be a good place to start. And then here, let me go to the next one. All right. So then reflect on something that someone's done for you that's made you happy or thankful in a surprising way. This could be help that a classmate offered you, a situation you had with a peer, a teacher that just stood out to you in your memory, even if it was back in kindergarten, something they did gave you confidence or made you feel safe at school. This can be a relationship a student has with their coach. It can be their parents. It can be their siblings. It can be their cousins. It can be the nice guy who works at the supermarket, whatever it might be. There's so much that can work here. It can be a complete stranger who just happened to do something nice in a given moment on one day. Maybe you had the person in front of you at Starbucks who paid for your order just as a pay it forward kind of thing, and it shaped your thinking. Or it motivated you in some way. Maybe you received kindness from someone who didn't seem to have a lot to give, but they wanted to help you, and it shaped you in a certain way, or it motivated you to take a certain pathway. Then with accomplishment, event, realization, this can be, again, anything under the sun. Making a team, beating a game, getting a certain grade in a class that you struggle in. I would think back and say, for me, I always described myself as not a math person until I had this really incredible math teacher that changed the way I thought about it. I wouldn't say I'm still the greatest math person in the world or anything like that, but stories you can tell about, even getting your license, helping your family, anything that is an accomplishment in your life. I've had students that went to video game competitions and wrote about that, and that it's not something that, is reflected in their application or something that they, this can also be Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts related. Any option here that it's limitless in terms of what you can talk about, because it can be an event, a realization. It doesn't simply have to be an accomplishment. And then for describe a topic you find so engaging, again, this can be a really interesting topic in science. I've had students write about genetics before for this, that they really wanted to understand it on their own. Other individuals, even, last year and the year before, starting to write about what they imagine the impact of AI would be in the research they did on their own. This can be about podcasts, music that you're interested in. I've had students write about K-pop and why, they're so drawn to it. And again, you just want to make it about learning things on your own, why it captivates you, and what do you turn to when you want to learn more? Are you the type to go dig into research in a library, or are you the type to seek out an expert? So there's a lot you can do there as well. And again, if you have any questions during this, feel free to pop them into the Q&A. I keep taking a peek over just in case anyone has anything. And And then moving on here, this is actually about crafting the essay. So an outline can be incredibly helpful. I'm a big believer in post outlines at all, which we'll also go over here. But really, this is, once you've got to the point where you've chosen that particular prompt that you're going to run with or topic of your choice. And we want to make sure that the intro does a lot to capture the interest and that we're not losing them too much in the middle with too much summary of an event and not enough feeling. We want to make sure we're using vivid imagery. And so starting first with organizing your thoughts so that you make sure that every segment contributes to this overarching story that you're telling. So again, it's 650 words. That's about 2 pages, usually sometimes a page and a half, 2 pages. This is not going to be a novel. So you can't go to 651. It's at 650 or less. I've had students write a really compelling one in 400 words. I've had students need every single word until the end, and we were going through just trying to get them down from 680 to 650. So keep that in mind as you're writing, but you can always start to edit. You can work with someone to make sure you're taking out anything superfluous or anything that's a little too wordy. But you do want to make sure you're telling a complete story. Right. And then here we have, this is what I just mentioned. It doesn't have to be a standard 5-paragraph essay. This is not something you're turning into your English teacher to say, did I meet these rubric requirements? It can be 4 paragraphs. It can be 6. It can be 8. There can be a little interlude. There can be dialogue. There can be different things in this that make it stand out and make it creative. But as long as you're showing the student's voice within those 650 words, I mean, I've seen one that was pretty much Faulkner style, 1 paragraph, not a ton of punctuation. Risky choice, but very interesting. So please if you are a creative individual, feel free to step away from 5 paragraph. But if 5 paragraph makes you feel like you're answering everything, run with what works best for you. Because again, this is about you. There are going to be students out there who are more interested in poetry and lyrical writing that might include some quotes from something or might take a more creative approach that feels a little bit more postmodern, that feels a little bit different. Do what comes naturally to you, but don't be afraid if you start to veer towards something a little different than what you might pass in for your, English class in particular. And then here, for outlining, I've got, 2 options here. And again, it's really depends on what you're writing about. When you're working with a coach or you're talking to your English teacher or you're showing your parents or a friend, you might change a little bit of this up as you go through. But there's, starting with the narrative format, this is where you're the main character as a student. There's a struggle. There's something going on. There was an inflection point, right? So there's kind of like that intro and that hook where you're describing, I think of those movies that start like, yes, this is me, I'm in the hospital, or whatever it might be, like some kind of thing that pulls them in, being like, I never thought I'd find myself in X situation, whatever it is to pull them in, or, it could be an exclamation to start it, it can be anything, but we want that hook to start with. And then that part 1 of the story or challenge that you're facing, part 2 of it. If there's a part 3, again, this is paying attention to word count and what it means today. This is that so what part that I mentioned before. If they read this and they come away and they say, so what, and they don't have an answer, that's just a summary that you wrote of something. We need them to walk away and be like, why did Bernadette tell me this story? Why did Tommy want this to get across? What did Sania think about this that made her want to tell us? Whatever it could be, you want to answer that question. And so again, it can focus on an event occurring over months or years, or it can be a single event, a single day. It can be 2 hours of a student's life. It doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be that you're just talking about 2 hours, sitting in when you got adopted, or when whatever it could be by your, foster family. It could be a 3-year ordeal you went through with your sister. It can be, anything that you went through with your friends. Then there's more about like the vignette montage format, where again, you're going to always start with that intro and hook. A short scene with vivid details. This is when you're pulling them in, that it's kind of like you're showing them a movie in their head. And so you want that short scene, really vivid details, same thing moving forward in the content there. And it doesn't have to have this like firm conclusion where it's like, and on that day, I learned about the value of teamwork. It can be that we just feel as though we now know more about the student. For example, a really good one I read about this was a student that rode the L in Chicago every day and what they saw and the different people they saw on the train and out the window and different things like that. So it can show you all these vivid details, the colors of the trees, the way that the sound that the train made and the murmuring of the other people there and what they saw change over time, taking that every single day. So there's definitely multiple approaches to this. But these are two ways you can look at it. And again, you'll have the recording, but feel free to screenshot this if it's helpful. And of course, it would be incredibly more detailed if you're working with someone on it, because we're going to start to fill in those details. Okay. So in terms of the drafting process, obviously you have an outline at this point in the process, and you're going to begin to write freely. Try not to edit as you're going along, just write. It's like every creative writing teacher will tell you that. And even for the most formalized research-based papers, just try to get your ideas out that. That's why a lot of us come back and rewrite our thesis when we finish it. We change the titles of things. You're going to come back, and like I mentioned, there's an element of post-outlining, which I'll suggest as well, where you'll be able to, get a sense of, now that you wrote it all out, what do you need to change? But once the draft is complete, we're going to talk about revising for clarity, seeking feedback, and making sure you feel really good about that final product. So you want to get a couple of proofreaders. And I know sometimes this can be hard, because I think sometimes mom and dad want to be those proofreaders, and sometimes the student doesn't want that, or they might want you to be the last one after they're already ready to submit it and they don't really want input. Other times they want it. I can say for myself, with my daughter who's a freshman in college, even though she had a guidance counselor in the house, later on, it was much more towards the end of the essay being done when she was more comfortable with sharing it before she submitted it. Some students are going to want that. Some students are going to want to show their guidance counselor, their English teacher, their best friend, and a tutor and a college coach and all of that good stuff. I do recommend 2 or 3 proofreaders, because everybody catches something different. You might have that friend who's just awesome at commas and make sure you didn't miss anything. You have another one who's like, this didn't make sense to me. Can you switch this and move this around? Or you don't need to say this. So somebody that you trust, but I don't want students necessarily to share it with too many people, because that's when students start to lose their voice. When somebody else comes in and edits and says, I wouldn't use this word here, unless it's really critical to the tone of the message or the meaning is really off, you want the student to sound like themselves. So you've got to be very cautious about editing it to where it sounds not like them. And that's not because of being afraid of AI. That's not being afraid of plagiarism. That's that suddenly this essay has parts that sound like them, parts that don't, and then it becomes less cohesive. And it can become overwhelming, and it can become, I want to start over, that you're kind of losing your voice in it. Then I mentioned here post-outlining it. So once you have that draft in front of you, you have your student, or if it's you, the student, go next to each paragraph and be like, what is this about? And just write, what does it show? Does this show growth here, or is this just summary? What is this showing here? Is this lead up to my growth? Did I touch on my growth enough? So you're going to be writing next to every paragraph what it means, what it accomplishes. And then hopefully when you get to that last one, you can answer, so what? If you can't, you got to go back and see what's missing. I also suggest reading it out loud several times. This really will help students find mistakes or flow issues. A lot of times when we are reading in our head, we autocorrect. And so it's really important, even when I prepare to give presentations like this, that I read it out loud, because sometimes I might miss a mistake that I typed onto a slide, or that I typed into an email, or I typed into an essay, because my brain is just like, I can read this, I can fix this, and you jump over it. You see those things sometimes online showing it like, see, you didn't even notice there was a mistake in this. You want to make sure you're avoiding all of those mistakes. So read it out loud, read it to a family member, read it to a friend, read it in your mirror, whatever works for you, just to catch those little mistakes, but then also to adjust anything with flow. That's a really good way to find out if you transition between paragraphs really awkwardly, if it's not clear why we just moved on to the next scene. And it will really also ensure that the essay is in your child's voice. Again, I know I'm a broken record about that, but that is the most important aspect of the college essay. And then this piece is know when to let go. When do you free the college essay into the world, hit submit, and move on from it? You can edit anything forever. I could go back and edit everything I wrote in college, and I'd probably find a lot of mistakes. But I could edit an email that I wrote 3 days ago 5 more times, and I would still have gotten the point across the first time, and I still would have been eloquent. But there is a point where it's going to change your voice. You're going to start looking for synonyms that you would never use, and you're just trying to sound a certain way, or somebody's telling you to change something. Eventually, when you're editing forever, your story can get lost. So I do say that you got to get to a point where nobody loves the phrase done is better than perfect necessarily when it comes to this, because I know there's a lot riding on this, but you can't play that game with yourself up till 11:59 p.m. on the day that it's due, and you're just going to submit and you're second guessing yourself. You have to get to a place where you let go. And, perfect is the enemy of done. There's no such thing as a perfect college essay. Perfect is the enemy of done. So work with a college coach so that they can tell you when you're done too. You just need somebody to be like, this is it, leave it alone, stop looking at it, hit submit. Okay. And then for writing techniques and tips, I've got a few things here and some do's and don'ts as I know, head towards the last 15 minutes or so here. We talked a little bit about vivid imagery, personal anecdotes to engage the readers, maintaining that authentic voice. This is where you want, like I just said, you want the vocabulary to be appropriate yet impactful. So that means appropriate, like we don't necessarily want to be throwing anything in here controversial, but if you're making a point, I have seen essays that have a swear word in it or two. I have seen ones, but it has to make sure you're making the right impact. I've seen ones where it uses a lot of slang, but it's making a lot of impact there. And you want to keep it appropriate and understand that there's a person out there with biases that are reading this. But at the same time, you don't want to try too hard or sound forced. That's what I mentioned before when you're trying to find the best synonym possible for something and it sounded like you to begin with. And now that we threw in the 17th synonym down the list when you Googled it, it's like, does this person normally use this word when they talk? Is this part of their actual vernacular? Probably not. All right. And then here for the do's and don'ts, this goes kind of to the writing style that we mentioned and just the overall. These are my key do's and don'ts for effective essays. Show growth, resilience, or reflection. Sometimes it's going to be all three, right? So resilience, another time, like, another way we phrase that is great. Your ability to get through something, persevere, and, show that strength for it. It doesn't mean you didn't have moments of weakness. It doesn't mean that you didn't fail at points, but that you were able to push through. Reflection, that you're able to look back on a younger version of yourself, or even a version of yourself 6 months ago, or you're able to look back on a situation and reflect on it very differently than in the moment, or with just more maturity or whatever it might be. Again, speaking in generalities here, because any essay might have, and topic might have its own way that it needs to go. Can't stress this enough. Use your own writing voice and tone. Again, this is important because we want them to hear the authentic you. And then this is also important because there are certain key phrases that almost all of the AIs out there use that really hit a red flag. I can tell you the word unlock is one of them. That comes up quite a bit. ChatGPT, for some reason, loves unlock. They want to unlock everything. But then there's other ones that can stand out, and they're just like any other college or high school. They use software to determine it. So just keep that in mind. Seek feedback and a proofreader. I would suggest a proofreader in your personal life and then also a professional one. As I mentioned, like a college essay coach with us would be incredibly helpful for that. But also your college counselor at school can be helpful. If there's somebody that you trust, an English teacher that might want to take a peek at it. Just keep in mind that college coaches are up to date on everything that colleges are looking for now. And what might have been great for an essay 5 years ago changes over time. Or what might sound really great might be the most repetitive essay of the past year. So try to work with somebody that has the experience in it so you can make sure you're putting out there what you need to. Focus on a moment or two. You can't tell your whole life story in the college essay. If you did, it's just really going to be a list because you got a page and a half, max 2 pages to tell it. Try to focus on a moment or two that shows them something about you. Have fun with the essay. back in my day when I wrote it, I wrote one like about being, a pathological liar, and it was all satire. It was all funny. It was meant to be funny. And biggest important part here, answer so what. That's the one thing I want you guys to all take away from this. Read your essays, get to the end and be like, what did I just do? If you can answer it, then you're in pretty good shape. For the don'ts, don't write about what you want to do when you grow up. And that, I mean, just phrasing. It can hint towards your future goals, but you want to be careful about it being too much of the, I'm going to major in engineering so I can become an engineer. It's got to be more about the impact you want to have, or the growth you would like to see in yourself, or where you'd like to see this take you if you are taking that route. So again, it doesn't mean that you can't talk about the future. Make sure that you're showing something with that too. Don't mention the name of a particular college or university in the essay. This is the Common App essay. This is the one that is being submitted to all of them. You're not going to they don't want to see that this is why I'm applying to Dartmouth University. There are different things for college. There are different things for this. There's other parts where they're going to ask you those questions. Don't just reiterate your application or your resume. If they're reading your extracurriculars and they know that you've got a 4.2 GPA and they know that you got X, Y, Z on the SAT and that you took these classes, you're not going to reiterate this here. You can pick one thing out and you want to talk about your experience and your AP Lit class and how you all became best friends through joined love of poetry. Certainly, you can talk about that. But you don't want to just reiterate what they already know. Don't give too much information on sensitive topics. This is, again, where I suggest that students rely on an expert, and that can be their school counselor, that can be a college coach. There are times where telling a story can be very helpful. There are times where you might have to pull back certain details. By no means do I want to censor what a student writes for college, but I want to be realistic with them about the bias that a reader might have when they read something. So again, that could be anything sensitive topic-wise, and I know that that's a very general term. That's something I work on individually with students. There's no examples here, nothing that I would say, but if there's something that you feel is slightly sensitive, run it by someone. And it could just be that, okay, we're not going to give these 6 details, but we're going to give an overview. It might just be something that you choose not to write about, or it could be the best way to show them a side of yourself that they don't see otherwise. So again, I would defer on that one. Don't really write an essay you'd write for school unless it's a creative writing class or you've got some really nice, free range in a particular English class you're doing. You're not doing research, you're not writing a works cited, you're not filling a rubric, you're showing growth. And also, don't give it a title. I've had a lot of students submit it with a title. It doesn't need a title. They know you're answering a prompt. You don't need to give it a title. The importance of feedback and proofreading, I'll be quick here because I know we've talked about this a lot, but you just want to miss those little careless mistakes. You want them to know that you put a lot into this and that you are putting forth your best product. You didn't just copy and paste it and not look to see if it was formatted, that you didn't accidentally paste in 2 paragraphs twice and so now it's repeating. And then also just, having somebody else tell you, this is good, it's ready to go. Okay. And then I did include a little bit here, and feel free to start adding any questions you have, but I did want people to see a little bit about some of those particular college essays and the Why Us college essay. From a lot of schools you will see, please tell us why you want to attend blank university, or why do you believe George Mason University is the right institution for you. These are usually very short, 100 to 400 words. Sometimes 125, and you can only get a little bit in. I've seen one that's 50 words before, so very quick. They're typically found under custom questions or writing on the school-specific sections of the Common Application. Occasionally, they're optional. Some schools require them. This will pop up if you choose test optional. Another essay will pop up, for example. Certain schools have that. But the reality of it is that really when it comes down to it, if you want to go to that school and it says optional, you're going to write that essay. Any school, even if it's like your absolute last choice, safety that you don't necessarily want to attend, which I encourage you all to have safeties that you really like, still write the essay. It shows that you're not terribly serious about the school if you don't write it. And so it will look like this. Like I said, it could be under questions like this, and you can see this one is a max of 100 words. And for the do's and don'ts of this, you do want to make sure that you do thorough research beyond the basics, even if it's not your top choice. So you want to talk to your local admissions rep. They're there for a reason. If you go to any school's website, they will show you who's responsible for what region. They also should be showing up at your high school periodically. Learn some more about the college so that you know more than what you've seen on their Instagram or more than you've seen on the front page of their website. Look at a course catalog on their website and look at a syllabus as well if you can find one. Get a sense of more about the school. Look at the activities that they offer on campus. Click on the part that says campus life. Look at their study abroad section. Look at what they offer for clubs and sports and, excursions and different opportunities. Do mention at least 2 or 3 reasons why you're applying. So something specific about a major of interest, specific research program you want to do, an internship you're looking for. If you're a legacy student, you can mention it there. We know some schools don't necessarily factor that anymore. Other ones still certainly do. Virginia Tech, for example, got rid of legacy, but you can still mention that it's important to you to attend someplace that's important to your family. You can also mention an experience from a college tour. My big don'ts here are don't just say you think the campus is pretty or the weather's nice. They know their campus is pretty. They pay for landscapers. They know that they're in South Carolina and the weather's gorgeous or whatever it might be. That's the obvious. That's not why you're going to school there. It could be a huge factor for you that you want to move someplace warm or that you do think it's a stunning place to be, but that's not part of this part of the essay. You can mention certainly that you're looking for a change of scenery, but you don't want to focus on things like that that are more aesthetic. Don't write that you have a friend attending the college who said you would like it there too. You can phrase it differently about you've known people to have fantastic experiences there, but you want to make sure you're just being a little more specific than so-and-so said I would like it or anything like that. And don't explain that you heard their psychology major is good or that the school is ranked number 12. They know what majors they have that are the best. No colleges in the United States really have that many bad majors anyway. And they know what they're ranked. And they know that they're ranked on several different things. You don't want to mention that. They're aware of their own marketing. They know all of that. But you can say one particular part I like about their psychology program is that all students must complete this particular internship in this particular area of study, and everybody needs to do abnormal psychology. And you can get into the specifics, but again, you don't have to tell them what they already know. The biggest considerations for the Why Us essay is that the response is about the school, but it's really about you. They're looking for how you fit into this. You want to show genuine enthusiasm without coming off as insincere. So you don't necessarily have to end it by saying like, you can't wait to be, I'm trying to, a Boston College Eagle, right? That you just can't wait, but you should be showing why you want to be there. So again, you want to try to cover major study area of interest, some other interests beyond academics, how you're going to contribute to the campus community, and something about campus culture. So I'll just breeze by these because I know we're running out of time, but major area of study, specific courses in the major, look at those 300, 400 level classes. I took a class in college called Artistic and Literary Responses to the Plague. It was one of the best classes I've ever taken. Go look and see if there's some really unique electives that really draw on your attention, or some other class that you can't wait to take when you're a junior there. So that will be really nice to see. Definitely make sure you show up what you might want to do on campus with their clubs and activities. Look into the university's community service. Check out all of their official social media platforms and see what else, like they might have a tradition that really means a lot and you could see yourself participating in that. Tie any of these back into who you are and why it would be important to you. So again, you're going to be condensed on words here. So getting some help with being concise will be really helpful and reducing the word count. Because you also want to show how you're going to give back to the campus society. How are they going to make it better? How are you going to contribute to the local community? Do you want, bring something unique to the campus? Did you create a community service back home? Were you a student leader and want to bring that capability to campus? Do you have a particular passion that you want to bring to Blacksburg, Virginia, for example, to go to Virginia Tech? There's a lot that you can do here to show what you want to bring so you can be part of the larger community. Campus culture, this can be, you want to show that you understand the culture there, that there's particular things that you might really like about their mission statement, recent initiatives that they've gone through. Their school motto could be important to you. You know, going back to Virginia Tech, theirs is that it literally is that I may serve. Like the big thing for them is community service. Maybe there's something about a focus that the school has, growing leaders. They want to change the world through this. They're one of the foremost in something related to, you know, solving the homelessness problem. Like whatever it could be that's important to you, could be about climate change, inclusivity, anything about that. You know, just we have schools that are ranked as some of the best schools for LGBTQ plus students and their allies. If that's important, you want to make sure that you emphasize that. All right, let me get to this next part for you. Potential outline here, again, screenshot if you'd like. I'm going to get you the recording, but you want to do an intro sentence, kind of a thesis like reason 1, reason 2, 3 if you have space, concluding sentence where you reiterate why it's a good fit. Really straightforward with this. You're only going to have so much space, but it's very important. These are some examples. I'll send them to you all so you can see them, just some of the examples for that. And lastly, just keep in mind if you're applying to a school like Virginia Tech, for example, they have 4 short responses in addition to the Common App. These are very important to them. For example, here, so that I may serve, they want you to answer a question about this. These are very short, as you can see, 120 words apiece. So sometimes what happens with students is they write the Common App, they think they're done, and then they go to fill out the application and realize there's 4 more essays to write, sometimes 10 more essays to write. So you want to make sure you're aware of these. These are the 2024, 2025 prompts. I imagine they're staying the same this year, but please keep in mind that colleges have until August 1st to change their own individual essays. The Common App essays that I showed you before, those 7 prompts, those are set. Those are not changing. Virginia Tech can change these by August 1st if they'd like to. They haven't in years. I don't think they're going to this year. UVA did change theirs over the last couple of years. They had one that was all very, very short questions where you had tiny characters to write. Now they want to see more about what about your individual background, perspective, or experience will serve as a sort of strength for you and those around you at UVA. So that's something to keep in mind for that. And so again, you want to show genuine interest and you want to show yourself. So I do have time for questions if anyone has any, and I did want to remind everyone too, oops, I went the wrong way there. Sorry about that if I'm making everyone seasick here. That when you do book a consultation with us after this, you will receive the opportunity to take advantage of a promo to buy 10 hours of college coaching, get 2 free, but it will also work for test prep or academic tutoring or anything of that nature. So a nice little savings as a thank you for you all attending tonight. But again, I'm here if you have any questions that you'd like to ask. Feel free to throw them into the chat. If you feel more inclined to do so after via email, you certainly can. And I'll put my email address in the chat for everyone as well here. But you will receive a full email from me breaking down what we talked about, sharing the recording with you, and being a resource to answer any questions you have, and to hopefully be able to have the chance to meet with you and see if we can be supportive in any way. I don't see any questions in the Q&A just yet. I'll give it another second. If you feel sure, for the cost per sessions, we do have a couple of different rates. I'll send that in an attachment to the email. The college coaching rate is a little bit different than the test prep rate, but oh, and thank you for the nice compliment there too, as well. I appreciate it. But basically speaking, college admissions coaching has 2 rates. I'll send it to you. One is $98 per hour. One is $94 per hour. So I'll send that to all of you so that you can see it. And then we do have a promo that you can use like this one that I just mentioned, where you get 2 of those free, which is really nice. All right. I do see some people are dropping off, and so save those questions for me, send them my way, and I'll get back to you all with the recording once it's processed, so just a couple hours from now, and we'll get that over to you, and I'll be here to answer any questions that you might have and to be a resource moving forward. All right, well, I hope you all have a lovely evening, and I look forward to touching base with all of you and helping you guys as you go through the process yourself or with your kids. Thanks so much and have a great night.